Agency is not disobedience. The camera had been part of his life long before the wall gave way. For more than a year, Elias had been speaking into it the way men speak when they are no longer certain that silence is virtuous. Short recordings, unadorned, sometimes deleted, sometimes kept. Observations made carefully, as if he were testing whether doubt itself was permitted. He spoke about waiting, about how patience had been elevated into a moral credential, about how trust was measured not by clarity, but by compliance. He noticed how often the language of love was paired with delay, and how often delay was framed as proof of faith. It was not the waiting that disturbed him. It was the obedience. Obedience to timing he was not allowed to question. Obedience to silence he was told to interpret as wisdom. Obedience to suffering rebranded as refinement. The system did not ask him to listen. It asked him to submit. Each video clarified something small but irreversible. He was not being shaped. He was being stalled. He was not learning discernment. He was being trained to override it. The ideal devotee, he realized, was not awake at all. The ideal devotee was compliant. By the time January arrived in 2026, the symbols had lost their authority. The numbers no longer impressed him. The signs no longer startled him. He had begun to trust something far less mystical and far more dangerous to dogma: his own judgment. The wolf moon rose without instruction. It did not issue commandments. It did not demand obedience. It illuminated. It revealed edges. It returned scale to things that had been kept deliberately abstract. Under its light, Elias did not feel summoned. He felt returned. When his fist went through the drywall on January 2nd, it was not an act of defiance. It was a boundary being drawn by the body itself, a refusal to continue translating discomfort into virtue. Impact clarified what philosophy had obscured. He turned the camera on again. This time, he did not speak as someone seeking permission. He spoke as someone who had completed the experiment. He named the cost of obedience masquerading as spirituality. He named how waiting becomes a rite not of passage, but of attrition. He named how devotion is hollowed out when it requires the suspension of agency. He did not say there was no God. He said plainly that if God required him to abandon reason, instinct, and self-responsibility, then he did not yet recognize that voice as divine. The timestamps accumulated not because he was unraveling, but because the clarity held. The message did not escalate. It stabilized. A man speaking from the center of himself is not dramatic. He is simply difficult to control. Outside, the moon reached its height. It offered no reassurance, no approval. And for the first time, Elias did not interpret that silence as a test. He stepped into the cold without asking what it meant. The wolf within him was not feral. It was discerning. A creature that listens, evaluates, and moves when movement is required. Loyal not to obedience, but to truth as it is encountered, not as it is prescribed. He did not leave the mythology angry. He did not leave it wounded. He left it unpersuaded. Not waiting, not complying, not surrendering his life to a doctrine that required him to behave like a machine in exchange for love. He walked forward, carrying something quieter than hope and more demanding than belief: responsibility. And with it, the unsettling freedom of a man who accepts that if God exists, God may want partners, not puppets.